Greetings, everyone. This is responding to a comment by one of my viewers or subscribers, sort of a request to have me talk about karma. I am so sorry. I forgot to write down your name and I don't remember where the comment was, so I can find your name again, but you know yourself. So I want to explain some things because oftentimes we just adapt words or ideas from other culture or philosophy that we don't necessarily adhere to or agree to or live by. And then we use these ideas, in ways that we think we know, but it's completely misleading. And so I'm going to talk about how I understand the word karma and whether or not I believe in it. Now, in Buddhism, and in particular engaged Buddhism, I was able to examine the old concept of karma, but you'll find it also in Hinduism. And so many Jamaicans will talk about karma, but if they were to ask about what they feel, how they feel about Buddhism or Hinduism, they would have a lot of negative things to say. And it just always baffles me how we can be prejudiced against people or ideologies and still want to take from them. I just don't get that. Anyway, when it comes to the whole idea of karma, please understand that in this philosophy, the Hinduism or Buddhism, it is the idea that a person's action in a previous state of consciousness or existence will affect their future situation. So based on how you've lived your life in a past life, and the things that you do will determine your fate in this existence. So for the Buddhism or Hinduism, they'll say that if a person was very bad, or did bad things, put that in quotation, when they come back, when they forward into this existence or this new body, they're going to be penalized for it. And so if someone was a bad person in a previous life, in this one, the person could come back as an animal to pay for what they've done. And so it's that whole idea of samsara, the whole idea of living and dying, and that nobody really dies, but you transition and you return, and based on your behavior. In my idea of karma, I'm going to say that everything that happens to us, we create or we draw to ourselves. So again, when it comes to karma, people tend to think about the negative, not realizing that karma could be good or what you can consider to be bad. So based on how you've treated someone in the past and what you've done to people, good or bad, there's a scale. And depending on what you've done, let's just say you've tipped the scale at the far side on doing good things, then you will benefit from the blessings. Not necessarily you, but your children can reap the benefits or the blessings based on what you have done. In my own experience, I have had karma on both sides. If you look at it, well, I sowed this particular seed and therefore I reap this. I engage in this activity and therefore this was the result. It wasn't that there was a creator in the heavens just looking out to punish me. Otherwise, I would not be here because I am an imperfect person. But I have noticed over time, and I have reconciled myself to this fact, that when people choose to do harm to me, there's always a means of escape. First and foremost, it doesn't matter what anyone tries to do to you. Whether they try or they succeed in bringing about a certain result, once you don't engage in any evil activities, once you don't go out to seek to harm someone, even when they have hurt you, then there must be a means of escape. And so if somebody lays traps for you and you even step on one of these traps, you'll be fine. You will eventually be freed from that. However, the person who laid in wait for you have already tipped the scale. They have done something to someone else that is bound to happen to them. It's that, equilibrium, that sort of balance. If you want pure evil in your life, then just continue to do the things that are evil and you're bound to collect. If you try to live your life in a way where you're imperfect, but you try to live, accordingly, you kind and loving towards someone, then you are going to tip the scale. It's just impossible for you to reap what you didn't sow. And so even when you look at your life and you say, this one did this to me, my mother abandoned me, my father abandoned me, my relationship, you might think that person is evil, but the time came for that individual to get out of your life, to clear the path so something new can come. When the person does something to you and you say, this person did this terrible thing to me, sometimes these things are allowed. So if you look into the scripture, you're hearing about God and you're hearing about the devil, and you're hearing that God created the devil, and you're thinking, well, God would be so limited in wisdom not to realize that eventually this so-called devil was going to come and create problems in heaven and be cast down on earth, and people wouldn't have the strength to resist, and all of these things that we hear in the scripture. So in everything, let's think polarity. Okay? In everything, there is a balance. So what you call good and evil, one cannot be understood without the other. You would never know what good is without the presence of what is called evil. Okay? And so in my experiences, I can see how folks have done things to me that are hurtful. But in some way, I chose to invite these ones consciously or unconsciously into my space. And therefore, the spirits allow these ones to enter my domain so that I can learn a particular lesson. And I had a conversation with a friend recently, and I said, whenever anything keep repeating in your life, don't look at the folks who are doing it. Start examining yourself to say, what is it about me? Or what does the spirit want me to know? Why I keep creating the same thing or attracting the same people? It's not about the person, it's about you. And so if you focus on always making yourself better, do what you need to become a stronger person, you won't focus too much on the other person. If you bring everything back to you to say that I am the author, I am the creator of my experiences, then you're going to be very careful in what you think, because those thought process are creative. And so the things you fear are the things you produce. The things you desire are the things you bring about. So the whole idea of karma, as it relates to people doing all these bad things to you, yes, we all have our stories. I have built my channel on sharing stories of this kind. But until I understood that I create more of the thing that I fear, or I attract people to me that have the greatest lessons to teach. And so instead of looking at the other person and pointing the finger and saying, you can look in the mirror and say, me, what can I do that I no longer attract those kind of persons? What can I do so I can create an environment around myself that can create or attract the positive things into my life? So you don't waste so much time, saying, oh my gosh, you did all these horrible things. Because once you start looking at the other person about what they've done and not focus so much about what you have done, how you have created these situations in your life, then you're not going to be able to move on from those suffering. Again, the whole idea of suffering is brought to our life because there are lessons. There are always lessons to learn from every experience. And until you learn, they are going to repeat themselves. Sometimes women who date men or men who date women find themselves attractive to different looking people who they think these are different folks. But when you realize the way things end is the same. So it can't be John, Susan, Harry, Jane. It has to be you. And you have to now search yourself. If we center ourselves in our own truth and understanding ourselves as human beings, we're not going to focus too much on what other persons are going to do, because we're all frail. We are all weak. We all make mistake. We all offend, sometimes ourselves and others, and sometimes unwittingly. Sometimes we're not aware that we're doing these things. So if they set out to hurt you, and if they succeeded in hurting you in any way, understand that, well, they tip the scale, and therefore they're going to have to be the results. But typically, karma really has to do with the idea of being here before and coming back to reap your reward. Hope this is helpful, and perhaps you can share your own idea of what this karma means. I'm never waiting to see destruction upon my enemies, and I put that in quotation. I just know that whatever you do to someone, eventually you will experience that. Stay best.